Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for a link to my Amazon store where I've compiled some of the very best items available, including some of my own personal recommendations. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to do with you guys. One that a lot of you are like, how do you have almost 900 uploads and you have not reviewed this knife? I don't know. Blasphemy. This is the Benchmade Mini Griptilian, specifically the upgraded 20CV variant. There will be plenty of links down in the description where you can pick this knife and any other variants that are available up for yourself. This was actually sent to me by a couple named Jack and Cindy. They're down in California. I hope you guys are doing all right down there. They were generous enough to send me this and a large one, and I believe there was a third knife. But thank you so much, Jack and Cindy. It's because of people like them that I'm able to bring you guys daily knife content. And it's also because of my very generous patrons. Thank you so much for supporting me during this time. I can't tell you how much that means to me. If you'd like to check out my Patreon, there is a link down in the description. The support would absolutely mean the world to me. So why haven't I reviewed the Mini Griptilian? I cannot tell you guys that many times in my videos I say things like, and I'll have to excuse the tone of my voice, I'm still under the weather. Many times, in fact, more than any other knife, I have been 99% prepared to purchase a Benchmade Mini Griptilian. And I've got a dealer in town, and I've handled these knives many times, many variants of them. For whatever reason, I always back off, and I buy another full-size Griptilian, because I've owned that knife 3, 4, 5, 6 times. I can't remember now. And I didn't know exactly why. I've spent some time with this knife, and I've gotten familiar with it, and I can definitely give you guys my thoughts on it. But very interesting knife. I'm really happy to have been able to spend so much time with it, absolutely. So overall length of the Benchmade Mini Griptilian is coming in at 6.75 inches overall. The blade length is just a hair under 3 inches. I mean, it is absolute, but it's still close enough to where if the person who was deciding your fate at that moment in terms of the law didn't like you, you know, it's close enough. You still want to be careful with it, but officially it does look to be under 3 inches. And then the actual cutting edge on this guy is coming in at about maybe 2.8, something like that. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. Rat 1's coming in at 8.6 inches overall. You can see there it's much smaller than the Rat 1. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in 8 inches overall. That's about the same size as the Griptilian. Speaking of the Benchmade Griptilian, let's go ahead and just do a size comparison with the Benchmade Griptilian. This is the other knife that they sent along, the full-size Griptilian, coming in at, you guessed it, 8 inches overall. And last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3. Spyderco Para 3 coming in closest at 7.25 inches overall. How's the action of this guy? Well, it's running on Foster Brown's washers. It's an axis lock. It's very typical of a Benchmade Griptilian. The thumb stud is very snappy and responsive. It's good. This one's very new, and it's got a pretty drop shut action out of the gate, and that's nice. I've been kind of fiddling with the pivot. This is the case with almost every mini grip that I have felt. And I'll give you guys kind of a good news, bad news situation. The bad news first is that most of the time I find that even if I'm able to go in a shop and handle one of these and the blade actually is centered, it almost always has at least a little tiny bit of blade play, right? If you can find one that is centered and is smooth, I can almost guarantee it's still going to have a little bit of blade play. Now, on the other end of that, every single Benchmade that I have ever owned, about 25% of them had something that's off one way or another. And yes, I know it should be right from the factory. Now, here lately, Benchmade has been doing a much better job, in my opinion, of making sure that all these things are worked out before they actually get into the hands of people. Obviously, there's still knives that are sitting on shelves, but it seems like newer variants and newer models entirely, right, in terms of manufacturing, are a little bit better. The good news is that pretty much every single time, other than maybe once, I was able to use the, if you guys don't know, I have a guide to how to center a folding knife and get the action smooth without there being blade play. It'll work most of the time, and it does work really well with Benchmade knives. Most of the time, I've been able to fiddle with it a little bit, use that technique, adjust the body screws and the pivot in a way where it pulls the blade back center, and I get the action that I want, and it gets up solid. That's probably something that I can do with this knife. I'm not going to, because let's go ahead and do the hardware check. Get out my handy dandy WIA bit selector and WIA magnetic driver, 2 items that are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them down in the Amazon store that I reference at the beginning of every single video. Just pull it open and look for knife maintenance. That's T7. Because these knives utilize T6 on the body, and I am not going to mess up their T6 screws. Why am I so afraid of these T6 screws particularly? I have a bad experience with Benchmade Griptilians in particular, and these specific T6 screws. I've stripped more of them than anything else. I think that Benchmade likely uses less Loctite than they used to, because I haven't had a problem here recently. I'm still not going to mess with it. The actual pivot screw is, come on, T10. I'll show you guys right there. Pivot screws T10. These are knives that can be like micro adjusted. A lot of knives can be, but these are really, really sensitive to the amount of movement you put in there. I don't like T6 screws in general because, like I said, they strip out, but I'm 99% certain I could get this thing centered and pretty solid. I mean, there's always, if you wrench on knives, most knives, not all, most knives, you can always feel a little teeny tiny bit of blade play if you're really wrenching on it. I don't recommend you do that. It's a good way to accidentally cut yourself, but it is what it is. It's not that big of a deal. Moving on here, let's talk about carry profile. Wow, this is not a cumbersome knife. We have a blade stock thickness of like 99 thousandths, very thin. And then we have contoured scales that are still not quite as thick as a Para 3, which is nice because you get that contouring, that hand filling feeling. Overall, the knife is just not cumbersome. It's thin and it's short, right? It's not, it's just not big, no matter, you know, how you're looking at it here. Up against the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3, two knives that are not necessarily difficult to carry, but they have awkward carry profiles. They're both bigger, right? They're both taller, bigger. This is a small knife. It's a mini variant of the knife, so that's to be expected. Overall weight, go ahead and give you guys a look at weight. This is G10 with a small cartridge liner on the inside. Hey, flashlight's handy today. You can see, actually on these, I always forget, the minis, the cartridge liner is all the way, whereas on the large ones, they're only about 3/4, right? You can see the metal inside there, so that's kind of nice. I think they're probably almost exactly the same size cartridge liner. In any case, the knife comes in at 2.89 ounces, which is right on that ounce and inch line, like almost exactly. So that's nice. That's not going to bother anybody. This is a knife that almost anybody can carry, and you can carry it in a wide variety of different situations, and it's fantastic. So I don't have any issues with that whatsoever. Let's go ahead and talk about anatomy here. So this is the upgraded like -1 version. The standard version of the mini grip now comes in S30V. It used to be 154cm, and before that it was 440C. Did they have mini Griptilians back when they did 440C? I know that they did when they did 154cm, which is still a great blade steel. A lot of people consider S30V to be an upgrade to 154cm. I don't really care one way or another. Both steels are great. S30V is powder formed. It was made for knives, and I think it's just trends and, you know, the viewpoint of S30V. And it's funny because now S30V is like, you know, people consider it kind of old news. It's still a great blade steel for the base models. And then this version is actually upgraded again to 20 CV. Again, you know, heavy quotes on upgrade. It depends on what you want from your knife. But considering the size and probably the design purpose of this knife, 20 CV is an excellent choice. These are also part of the Benchmade custom shop. Of course, fantastic. I love that thing. Yes, they are expensive, but if you want a specific steel, right, I think you can get S30V. Can you get D2 on these guys? And then S90? Can you get S90? I don't know if you can get S90 on these. You can get M4 on them. Bunch of different stuff. Bunch of different blade shapes. You can get sheep's foot. You can get the Tanto, right? You can get the drop point. You can get it coated, non-coated. I think you can have it gray coated. And then there's a whole bunch of different options for scale colors. That's great. I love that. We're going to talk more about that here in a little bit, but yeah, this one is a little more expensive than the standard model. We have beautiful gray G10 on the outside that has that classic diamond pattern. These are nicely contoured, so it's smooth up here and it's a little texture down here. Has the blue G10 liners underneath. Some people like that, some people don't. I think it's pretty cool. Then we have the blue, I think these are aluminum barrel spacers that are blue. And then we have the 20 CV drop point blade. Really, really nice. No sharp edges all the way around. I mean, this is all great. Everybody kind of knows how, the hardware works. We've got the Chicago front ends here. We've got the T6 on the back, and then you've got the 2 screws in the center holding the cartridge liner to the scales. The blade is great. The thumb stud's, a little teeny tiny bit in the cutting path. It's pretty much splitting the difference. It's kind of trivial. Access to the stud is perfect. It takes very little effort to actually fire the blade out, and you can do the reverse flick if you want to. So that's also nice. They're very easy to engage. There's some jimping up here, which does provide meaningful traction, especially considering it actually comes back here on the back of the knife, which I actually appreciate on a knife like this because it's not quite a full grip. It's small. That's part of the reason that I've always been held back by this knife is I really like to get a full grip on my knives. Every time I pull the knife out of my pocket, if it's a 3-finger position knife, me personally, I'm like, I just want it to be just a little bit longer. That's different for every single person. If you've got smaller hands, you might be able to get a full grip on this knife. If you've got, I wear an XL glove, and anybody who knows glove sizes, XL glove doesn't really mean you have an XL sized hand. I would say I've got slightly larger than normal hands, right? What people would think would fit in a large glove. A large glove is too small for me. XL is about what I wear. If you have truly XL sized hands, I don't know if you're really going to feel like this is the knife for you, right? If you've got monster hands. But if you're somewhere in between or on the smaller side, you might be okay with it. The drop point blade is the classic Griptilian drop point blade. This version is tumbled. They do come coated if you want them that way. There's also versions that are serrated, half serrated. I think it comes that way potentially also in the sheep's foot and Tanto. So there's a lot of different options there. Not a thick blade. It does come down to a pretty thin tip, but not crazy. I mean, what are you going to be doing with this knife where you're going to be putting the tip in danger? This is not a hard use knife. This is a regular EDC knife, and I think the blade is executed properly. It has the typical slightly toothy Benchmade edge. Some people will argue that those are actually better at cutting. When it comes down to EDC tasks, which is what this is designed for, I think it's kind of trivial. The 20 CV and the geometry of the blade is going to do exactly what you want it to do, and I think most people are going to be really happy with that. On top of that, it just has the typical Benchmade logo. On the other side, it says Mel Pardue, and then it has, I think, yeah, it says 20 CV, and that's pretty much it. So that's great, no issues there. Moving down to back here, we have, of course, Benchmade's well, it's actually the small deep carry clip, and that's the one that comes on the bug out standard. And I don't know if these are now including this. If they are, that's a good move. I think normally they used to have the split arrow clip, and then I would always switch it out if I had the option. I'm sorry. If I had the option, I would switch it out to this guy, but that was before this was available. I think this is exactly the right clip for this knife, but I don't know exactly which one it comes with. That's the first time I had noticed that. I think that's a perfect clip for that. You can also mount it on the left-hand side, and considering this is an axis lock, lefties can rejoice because it is truly ambidextrous, right? You don't need to buy a special left-handed version of the knife, so that's great. Like I said, this one's slightly off-centered, and it bothers me a little bit. I mean, at this price, every single one of these should come on center. And I've found that when I handle mini grips in the store, there's about a 50% chance it's going to be off center. And then if it is on center, there's like a 75% chance that it's going to have a little bit of wiggle. Again, I think that can be fixed, but these issues should be sorted out. There are, I mean, look at Civivi making $50 knives, or even CJRB making $30 knives that are solid and they are centered. This issue should be fixed. It shouldn't be a deal breaker to you. It's a slight annoyance. It shouldn't keep you from buying the knife because, like I said, they're pretty easy to adjust and get back on center. Now, in some cases, you will have a knife that just absolutely is not centered and it always wiggles and right. Then, if you go ahead and buy it and you don't want to send it back and, you go ahead and buy it and for whatever reason you can't return it, Benchmade has an excellent warranty. That's where a lot of this is made up, is Benchmade's warranty is one of the best warranties out there. And on top of that, this is made in the United States, which is fantastic, right? If you need another clip, you need, more hardware, they're really good about that. And their turnaround is not bad if you do have to send a knife in for something, and they will take care of you. And if they can't fix something on the knife, usually they replace it. I don't speak for Benchmade, so that's obviously something you need to check with them. Right? I don't have the final say. Benchmade does. So check with Benchmade. You don't have to listen. You shouldn't listen to me over Benchmade anyway. But they do have an excellent warranty, and that's where a lot of the extra money, because a lot of people look at Benchmade knives,
They look at the materials, they look at, in some situations, they look at fit and finish issues, and they're like, why am I paying so much money for this? A good chunk of what you're paying for is their undeniably good warranty. That is absolutely something that I can get on board with, and so I'm happy with that. It does almost make up for that. Another issue that some Benchmade knives have is they use the Omega springs. Omega springs can break. They are a part that breaks more often in knives than other, items that are notorious for sometimes breaking. And that's like a torsion bar and an assisted knife. But again, rest assured, it's not something that you're going to experience all the time. In fact, the reason you read about it so much is because, number one, they're slightly more likely to break than other moving parts. But people are generally only going to voice their opinion on stuff like that when it breaks. You're not going to have hordes of people who are completely satisfied with their Benchmade knives and their Omega springs just constantly blasting it all over the internet going, this works as intended. No, you're generally going to hear the negative stuff. So that's why it seems like it's happening more often than not. Even down in my comment section right now, you're likely to find someone go, my Omega springs broke the day that I got it. Well, sometimes that's going to happen. Thank goodness for Benchmade's warranty. It is potentially a drawback of Omega springs, so just keep that in mind if you're wanting to purchase this. But it's made up for the fact that it's got just one of the most excellent, not just fidget factors, but it's so easy to manipulate. These are really, really easy to get out and put away with one hand, so I like that. I think that's pretty much it. So again, what are the things that I don't like about this knife? Personally, I don't like that it's 3-finger position. I don't like that it's using T6 screws. I am not, I'm always a little bit wary of the Omega springs, and the main thing is the fit and finish things that you have to deal with sometimes. It's just extra steps you have to take, and if you're not familiar with T6 screws and how to center a blade, or you're not confident with it, it can really be frustrating. The final price on this particular version of the knife, -1, is about $170, which at that price, it should absolutely all those things should be, it should be good from the start. The base version of this knife, the FRN model, which is not, I don't like FRN, they come in at what? 85 to 90 bucks. It's a good deal, but even at that price, the fit and finish stuff should be taken care of. So what's the final verdict? Can I recommend this knife? Here's the best thing about this knife, the thing that offsets everything. This version of the Benchmade Griptilian, this large version, is actually from the custom shop. This version of the knife is larger. It has an absolutely false shut action, and it absolutely is solid, no blade play up, down, left, or right, and it is also centered. That has been the case with all of the custom shop Benchmades that I have ever handled. I actually have a custom shop Benchmade Crooked River that was gifted to me by my buddy Shaker, and it is the same thing. It is false shut, it has perfectly centered blade, and it is absolutely solid up, down, left, or right. On top of that, little things like the final cutting bevel are even done correctly, which is sometimes another fit and finish issue that you can experience with Benchmade knives. The custom shop seems to have all that stuff worked out, and I think because a lot of it is hand-checked, hand-fitted, takes a little bit longer to get the knife to you. The Benchmade Griptilian in general has probably the largest secondary and manufacturer market of custom hardware, even over Hinderer knives. There are so many potential outcomes for a Benchmade Griptilian, large and small, and that's because of how many people love them. This is a legendary model. It's still one of the most preferable EDC knives that has ever existed. The fact that you can truly, whether it's through the Benchmade custom shop or through aftermarket part makers, you can truly make either of these knives whatever you want is really, really cool. Yes, you have to pay more money for it, right? Some people see value in that, some people don't. But I love that. I think it's great. So all the way around, truthfully, I think this knife is a little bit overpriced, but there's enough good here to where I can say, even here in 2020, yeah, the Benchmade Mini Griptilian is still recommendable. If you're on the fence, buy the FRN model at $85 and experience it. $85 is still a lot of money, but it's not like paying $170 for a knife you're really going to be like, ugh, it's more than double, right? The original one. So go with that one. And then if you decide, yeah, I like it, well, you've still got an S30V blade, right? So that's great. You can add some custom scales. You can spend 60, 65 bucks and get some cool custom G10 scales or micarta scales and really make it the one that you want, right? You can even buy different colors of titanium hardware. I know XXX Adrenaline XXX on eBay does a lot of custom hardware for knives like these. So you know, you can spend money how you want to, right? If you decide you want to, and make it the knife that you want, or you can leave it completely alone if you like the FRN model. Both the FRN and the G10 model, I'm just going to be clear, I think are recommendable, but I still think that both of them are a little overpriced. I'd love to see the Mini Griptilian and FRN drop to about 65 to 70 bucks, and I'd like to see this guy no more than about $150, but I'd like to see all those little quirks taken care of from the start. Guys, I think that's going to be pretty much it for today's review. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on this metal complex logo right here and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.